Well, we are live once again with Coffee with Humans with my new friend Herb. Herb, welcome to Coffee with Humans, sir.
Why, thank you, Jason. Yeah, I, I saw
Well,
that
this is,
little preview. I'm like, man, where would I like to have this? I said, oh, yeah.
yeah, where would you like to have this
I
chat
know
if you
that
could
that
decide?
little hot springs in Iceland look pretty damn cool.
I
Um,
got that hot spring in Iceland. So I was looking at places that I thought, this would be kind of fun. And so I on that particular episode, I showed the hot spring.
right?
And then I got to talking actually with a person from Iceland,
Really?
and he said that is not a hot spring. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says it's actually hot water runoff from a manufacturing plant. And
Oh,
he says, and it's got like heavy salts and that type of stuff in it. And he says, so people they charge a ton of money to go into this manufacturing plant runoff.
hmm.
And and I was like, oh shoot, that's not a hot spring. It looks beautiful. He says, yeah, it is beautiful, and people sit in it, but he says supposedly it's clean.
Huh, interesting. Yeah, because my idea, having been to hot springs, like when I lived in Oregon,
Yeah.
are really just like little. If you find them out in the mountains, like just really like holes in the ground. They're not like that one. But I've been to them in different countries, like when I was in Taiwan, and they're just kind of built up like those little baths, kind of communal bath type of things. But they're
Oh, okay.
not, yeah, they're not. But the ones in Oregon, with just, yeah, you just walk through, they're like little trails through the woods, and you just sit in this little hole in the ground that's got hot water gurgling up. And now that's pretty damn cool. Um,
Right? Yeah.
yeah,
Hot springs are awesome. I
yeah, they
love them.
are, especially in the wintertime. It's like great to go, strip down, sit in a hot spring while you got snow on the ground all around you. And it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, this is exciting. I normally don't meet my guests before we go to Coffee with Humans, and
Correct.
but I know you a little bit,
Hmm.
which makes this a unique experience because
Right.
I
And
rarely know my guests before I meet them on Coffee with Humans. So welcome to this. You when you signed up did enter a handful of pieces of information. One of which was what was on your mind at the time.
mhm,
And today when we were naming this chat, you talked about focus.
mhm.
What's this word focus, and why does it come to your mind?
Well, the focus comes to my mind. Part of it, it goes with different things. I was reading some stuff today on LinkedIn, different posts. That's the idea of what do you want to say? What you focus on is what you attract, what you get, what you manifest, whatever, right? So if you and I are talking and you said something like, "Yeah, that's a dorky looking shirt," I could focus on that and say, "Damn, Jason's being fucking rude. He's just ripping on my clothes. It's my favorite shirt. We know what a jerk he is, right?" That would be my kind of a narrow little focus. Or I could let it go and say, yeah, but we're having this other conversation that's really cool. He doesn't like my shirt, BFD, right? So your comment, your same comment, how I choose to focus on or what I do with that comment determines the whole rest of our conversation, our brunch, everything else, right? So that's what I
Yes.
think where the focus comes in. Yeah, it's a little bit
Gotcha.
better than that ambiguous word of mindset or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, people have a tendency to see what they want to see. It is
Mhm.
it's a cognitive feature of our brains that when we intend to look at something, we see it. That's why people shopping for cars, let's say,
All right. Huh?
they're like, man, I've never seen this car on the road. And then as they start to shop for that car,
Right.
buy that car, it's like, oh my God, everybody's got that car.
Right. Right.
And why did we miss it before? We'd
Mm-hmm.
missed it before because we weren't looking for it. And it's also been studied pretty frequently that the idea that if you focus on positive things, your brain becomes wired
Right.
in a way that lends you to see those positive things. And if you focus on negative things, your brain becomes wired in a way to focus on negative things and have negative outcomes.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I've done those things, and I agree. It's true. Kind of like that old Mel Brooks movie a long time ago, Blazing Saddles. Remember, there's that little punchline there. It's true. It's true. Um, but you know, it takes a hell of a lot of focus to keep that going every day. right? Because you can do, all right, I'm good for a couple days, just like doing your exercise routine. I got it, good. And then something comes along and poof, you're off track again. Yeah, so keeping that focus on a daily basis on being positive, don't letting the little shit bring you down again. Like, oh no, and then your whole day starts to, be ruined.
So I know a little bit about you. You're an ultra marathoner.
Correct. Yeah, I would say I'm almost a semi-retired ultra marathoner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in my book, once an ultra marathoner, always an ultra marathoner.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
It takes probably I would suppose, and you tell me. I would suggest that it probably takes quite a bit of focus to be able to train to get to that point, and then also to go through 1 and 2, 3, and many ultra marathons. Tell me about that focus.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's a bit of focus, dedication, like keeping your eye on because unless you're really, really good, you're not going to train for an ultra marathon in just a couple weekends, right? Like, hey, let's go whip off a quick 30 miles tomorrow, right? So it takes a couple months, really, man. I think when I did my first one, it took me like 6 months to build up to that point, right? Okay. So I was a non-runner. I think I talked to you one time. My only running was at the bar when it said, last call, right? And then you run up, get your last beer. So to go from there to my first one, it took 6, 7 months to get ready, just to do the first one. And all your goal was just to finish. And that's all you wanted to do, just cross that damn finish line. So it does take a lot of focus. The training takes a lot. How to put all those other things in perspective. Like, your friends are going out, eating pizza, drinking beer, and like, nah, sorry, I can't go, because you got to do this, right?
Where did that focus come from for you when you're moving like you talk about, the only time I ever ran was for last call, to the point where 6 or 7 months later you're running an ultra marathon? What was the reason for that focus? Where did you get the strength to maintain the focus?
That is a damn good question. Let me get back to you now. No, I would say, what I tell people, because I also, when I switched over, is at the same time I started running ultra marathons, is I also quit drinking beer. Right? And I'll tell my clients the reason, and I quit drinking that night. It wasn't like, all right, let's just cut down. I'll have just a couple during the week and, go to the pub on the weekends. I just quit. Bam. And the reason was I shifted my identity of who I was. So instead of being this guy, a construction worker who, brews his own beer, a beer connoisseur, blah, blah, blah. Now my image, or what I wanted to be, was a triathlete. I was like, this would be cool. I want to be And at the same time, I'd been reading a magazine, a research magazine, and it showed what drinking alcohol does to your training program. So I said, well, if I want to do this over here, then doing this beer drinking over here is actually getting in the way of doing this, right? So then it became like so easy just to say, bam, done. This is getting in the way of what I want to do over here. And that's what kept my focus, because I wanted to become this person over here, or this goal. That's who I wanted. So that's why I think your focus is the focus is once you got that clear why. Now, if my focus is, I just want to get that t-shirt because it's really cool. Somehow I think that might not be a strong enough focus to get you through those terrible times when it's not so fun. Right?
What is it about you and your history, maybe your psychology of some sort, that would lead you to want to do ultra marathons?
That is another damn good question. You have a whole book of good questions over there or something?
Yeah, they're in my head.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I would say, because growing up in, grade school, high school, I was a short, fat kid. You know, the
Okay.
last one picked at, you know, when you go out to recess or your friends all get together in the neighborhood and make a, you know, I was almost always the last kid picked, you know.
Okay.
So it's not like I grew up being like this great athlete to say, oh, now I'm just going to go run some marathons. You know, that's a good question. And part of it was, you know, after I did my first couple of triathlons, I started doing because I was training for triathlons. I met these guys on a bike ride who were doing this thing called a century ride, right? You know, I'm riding my bike and this guy said, hey, we're going to go do a century ride. And I'm thinking, century ride, right? I said, oh, that's 100 miles, isn't it? And the guy, yeah. And he looks at me, right? I said, a century ride, wow, that take you like all week, you know, right? I'm thinking, right, 100 miles on a bicycle? What the hell? You know? And the guy looks back at me like, no, that's just that you just do that in the morning. And I was just like so amazed that humans could actually do this. And the guy could talk about it so nonchalantly, like, oh yeah, we're just going to go do a century ride. And I thought, oh, let's try this. You know, maybe because they made it sound so doable that I said, okay, let's try it. And really, that's really all it was a bit of curiosity that I could try it and see what would happen. If these guys can do it, then I could do it. Why not? You know, and that's really, you almost want to say ignorance is bliss. Because if I were to research how much work and training really goes into this, I might have said, oh my God, this is amazing. But no, I just said, all right, let's try it. Let's do it. And yeah, and then I just did it. And I did the next one, the next one, the next one. And so, you know, my first race was a marathon. Okay. And then a few years later, I actually went back and did a 5K, which is really backwards. But yeah, I figure as long as I'm training for a century ride, hell, why not do a marathon at the same time? It's all the same thing.
What do you get from the feeling of completing an ultramarathon? What's that feeling like?
Oh, it is definitely a badass little feeling of accomplishment. For sure. You know, and it's all internal because you're not going to like walk into the bar and say, you know, hey, I did an ultramarathon. And people, all right, like in Wayne's World, right? We're not worthy. You know, so really nobody really cares outside your little ultramarathon crew, right? It would be nice. You walk into the grocery store and they say, hey, look, that's the ultramarathon guy, right? Let him check out first. No, you know, all you really get is that internal sense that you accomplished something that you set out to do. And other than that, right, that's it. You talk to your family members, they're like, oh yeah, that's nice. You know, that's about it. Yeah. So
it doesn't give you anything deeper than just an internal sense of accomplishment.
no,
I mean, it's a pretty big deal to maintain the training at a rate that you can successfully do ultramarathons.
Right.
You know, sometimes back to back. There's nothing deeper than just like, hey, I did that.
No, I would think that's pretty, to me, I would say it's about as deep as you get, because think of most humans out there, since we're having humans with coffee, okay? How many humans go to their daily job and come home with a sense of satisfaction out of it, right? I would say it's probably a small percentage. You go to work, come home, go to work, come home, go to work, come home, right? And you go do various other things in your life. But coming out of after you finish an ultra, it's like, man, you know what you did to go into that. You know the satisfaction that, man, I put all this effort into that, and yeah, it all worked out. Yeah, it would be almost, I think, the same thing if you talk to a sculptor after they make a huge piece of work, you know, art or sculpture. You know, what they're feeling is that sense of accomplishment. Like, man, you put a bunch of scrap metal together, and now you've got this huge sculpture, right?
Okay.
So that would be, I think that's about the same thing. If you ask, what's his name? Picasso, right? Say, hey, Pablo, after you did that painting, what do you feel? Right? So.
it just becomes part of your life and your norm.
It becomes part of your life, your norm, and once you accomplish something, you get to the next thing, you accomplish that. Yeah, I would say, what's his name? Richard Branson.
Okay.
Right. He did his hot air ballooning. I mean, even in the business world, acquiring one company to another company. I think he does it for that. Part of it is that what can he get done? It's a goal setting process, and then once you get this goal, once you've got that goal done, then there's always another thing on your journey. It's never like, okay, I got that done. I'm good. I'm going home. That's it. Bye. Yeah.
Looking up at it, though, I mean, looking up at that major goal, because you're in the top 1% of marathoners for sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's a significant amount of effort and application that you applied, which was contrary to where very contrary to where you were at before.
Oh yeah, a huge.
Looking up at exactly. So looking up at that goal or towards that goal or looking at it in the distance, however you want to think about it. Mm-hmm. Did you think that it was just going to be like, well, I did that, or did you think it was going to be some sort of epic moment when you accomplished an ultramarathon?
Let's see. No, I didn't think it would be like the epic moment of the angels coming down and going. And balloons and confetti dropping, I guess because I had already done a couple the little triathlons before, and like you cross the finish line and that's it, move out of the way, let people come in, get out of the way, move on. So you realize, unless you're at the big thing like the Boston Marathon and you're like the top 10 athletes, you're really doing it just for the internal reward. And that's what I really think separates it from, say, like a professional sport where you're playing for big money, big prizes. All these things, you're really just doing it for the internal reward of that's it. On a smaller scale, I would say it's the same thing as like taking your kid and teach them how to swim for the first time, right? Once they learn how to swim and they're not like grabbing onto you with a death grip, it's like, oh, it's really cool. They can swim. They're having fun in the water. And then you would say, oh, what sense of accomplishment did you get out of that? And you say, well, it feels kind of cool. It's a good thing to watch them learn how to swim for the first time, right? There's no bells and whistles, but to me, it's the same type of accomplishment, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Right? You've got
How did your identity change when you went to this moment of becoming an ultramarathoner?
Yeah. Your identity, then at that point, I think probably the first time in my life, I really switched to the point from, especially where I grew up at. Like, oh, now I'm really an athlete because I can do this big stuff that very few people, like you say, the 1% are doing out of the whole population. So now it's like, oh, now you're actually a real athlete because you can accomplish this other stuff. And number two, it gives you that sense of your identity changes. Like, all right, if I can conquer this, then I could probably conquer something else, right? And that's the whole idea. What I try to get to people is, and I was doing this on LinkedIn, about the progression goes from over here accomplishing a physical goal, then it becomes a mental goal, and then it becomes something a little more, I hate to say that word, transcendent.
Okay.
But then you're running, like now I run just for mental floss. There's like, you don't have to prove anything anymore. You don't have to say, all right, that 100K, 100 miler, I don't have to do that anymore. Now it's running takes on its own little thing. It's almost like the old martial arts, the guy goes from white belt to black belt. And then once he gets to black belt for so many years, now they're not really doing karate anymore. Now they're just practicing for the sense of like Zenness.
Okay. Because it just becomes part of your norm.
It becomes part of your norm.
Your habits.
Your habit. And actually, I would say it's a good habit compared to my beer drinking days. So it's a little healthier habit in that sense of the word.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a good thing. It transforms your identity a little bit. And you know, there's lots of groups out there that are using, so I would say, athletics, running, as part of a drug recovery program. You know, and
Why?
because, and this because I spent 7 years working with drug programs in the jail system. And two, you can change somebody's identity of who they are. I think a lot of the traditional 12-step programs and willpower and things will only get you so far. Because deep down inside, that person still believes they're an addict, or they still believe that they need that, you know, that whatever, that drug of choice to get them through a rough day, right? When you change their identity, now whether it's running an ultramarathon, whether it's a weightlifting goal, whether it's something else, and they realize that they can do this without their drug of choice, right? Then all of a sudden their identity takes on a whole new meaning, if that makes sense. And once their identity changes of who they are, then they realize, oh, I really don't need that stuff anymore. You know? Same thing if you could take somebody who was prone to arguments and explosive anger, you know, and if you just said good morning to them the wrong way, they would burst out with something, okay? And if you could somehow change that person's identity to be calm and compassionate and, you know, loving of their fellow human beings, I bet you their anger behavior would change much more rapidly than any anger management course out there. Okay? Because then their behavior would no longer be compatible with their self-identity. Because right now, I could really, if you were to just, you could, you know, I go down to the pub with my running groups all the time, and I can sit there and drink water now. Because why? Because now drinking beer isn't compatible with my new identity of who I am.
So the process of replacing identity,
right?
Since it seems to be what we're talking about a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
We can focus back to the title of this chat.
Right. I was
we can
just going to
focus
say
on
that.
the things that we can focus on the things that we want to see, and then we begin to see those things.
Yeah. Right.
Then we can begin to act out of those things, and over time replace our identity with the identity of the person that we want to become. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. I was reading something today about habits and how to replace bad habits with good habits. And by some estimations, about 40% of our day and the choices that we think we're making are just habitual choices.
Yeah.
We give no thoughts to it. And there are two primary parts in our brain that allow us to deal with choice. One is that prefrontal cortex where we really give a lot of thought to something. So let's say you're going to eat ice cream, but you're like, I'm trying to lose weight, but man, should I have ice cream? Your prefrontal cortex might say, no, you should not have ice cream. This is not compatible with you wanting to lose weight. However, that is a quiet voice, a reasoned voice,
right? That's your mother
not filled with a lot of emotion.
Right.
And then I believe it's your orbitofrontal cortex or something like that, that holds some of the emotion behind our choices and says, yeah, you should have ice cream. That is really good.
That is good.
You deserve it.
Look at that ice cream over there, man.
Yeah. Plus, you could just work out harder tomorrow. And so then, boom, that's a loud voice speaks to us, and we go, "Yep, I'm going to have ice cream." The part of what they talk about in this article is to change our bad habits to good habits, or begin replacing these habits, is while we're engaging the activity, really give the consideration. Because while you're engaging in eating ice cream, let's say you can reason through like, oh, this, I don't actually feel good after this. This is not what I'm looking to do. Reason it through in that moment, to begin replacing the bad habit, because our brains are very cued to action, result, action, result, action, result, action, result. We can program ourselves, and that becomes our habits. I take this action, it's my habit, and I get this result.
Right.
If we interrupt that pattern of I ate this ice cream, by the way, you're not getting this result you're looking for, it can cut that down the middle, and we can begin to develop some of the strength to replace our bad habit with a good habit.
Correct.
Because we kind of break off, or we reason with ourselves, listen, this is not the outcome you're looking for. Now, it would seem to me that what you're talking about, where you had this identity, you now have this new modified identity, or parts of your identity have been replaced with some better things, or things that you see yourself in a better way, including the idea that you can sit down and have a drink with friends, and you're not going to go to the beer because you say this is not compatible with my current identity.
Okay.
How did you go about replacing or focusing on this new identity and taking steps to change? Because it cannot, it seems like we're just like skipping across the surface here, and you're saying, well, I changed this thing, but I know it wasn't that hard. I know it wasn't that easy. So what's the reality?
There I would kind of beg to differ with you.
Okay, talk to me.
I know. So you're on the right track there. The neocortical lobe, it's like, I think that was your mother talking to you, right? And then you have your emotional brain, your subconscious brain saying, that ice cream good. It's almost like your peers talking to you, right? And when it comes down to who's going to win, emotional side is always going to trump the rational side every damn single time, right? Every time, right? I mean, look at that. They put warning labels on every pack of cigarettes, right? They could just put on there, this shit will actually kill you, right? And people would still buy them and smoke them, right? Part of it's chemical, a lot of it's just emotional. So changing your ID, and I saw this years ago before he was even doing all this, that I remember watching this old guy that I knew who had been in the Navy and ran back then. I thought he was old. He was like probably in his early 60s, right? So he had started smoking as a teenager in the Navy, right? So 40 years, 50 years he's been smoking, right? All of a sudden I went over there one time and he's not smoking. Like, what's up? Right? No ashtrays, no. Turns out his daughter had a baby. He needed to watch the baby while the lady went back to work. But she said, no smoking around the baby. Right? And so this guy had a choice. He could babysit the baby. And anybody who's a parent knows, like, right, you got a cute little baby there. This guy quit smoking. Poof. Like that. Okay? And I've known that other people did the same thing when they had the emotional connection to why they were going to quit. They quit. Just bam. And that will overrule the rational stuff. I have so many clients. I had clients who we went through exercise program, talked about diets, this and that, and they would do good for about 2 weeks and then off again. And up again, down. And with this one client, once we made a connection between why she wanted to lose weight, that had nothing to do with the doctor and looking better and 10 pounds. We switched to a why, which was emotional. All of a sudden, we made more progress in 2 months than we had in 2 years. Right? So that convinced me, from seeing those people, then watching myself just quit drinking, like bam, in one weekend. That if you can wrap your brain around the new why do you want to do this? And it's not because my mom told me, not because the doctor said I need to lose 5 pounds, or not because I'm doing this so my wife will quit nagging me. It has to become a personal why, and then you can change. It's amazingly a lot simpler than what I think people think it is, and you don't need all these other steps behind it, because that's all your, as you say, your neocortical frontal lobe That's your rational brain. Now, your rational brain is nice to have on board, but I think emotional, everybody knows that. I think if you go to grocery, you go to and you go buy new clothes, buy a new car, right? You buy new clothes mostly because what? How it looks, right? That's your emotional brain. You don't buy new clothes because you do some fact check on that shirt has this many whatever strands of cotton per square inch, or it's going to last me this long, or whatever. You buy it because it looks good, right? Same thing when you go to a restaurant. You buy your favorite food because it tastes good.
Well, you buy. So I mean, back to this idea of buying behavior. I people buy things because they see the life and the individual that they're going to be in that. And so whether your person's buying it because it looks good, I'm going to look good in that. People are going to see me as this person. I'm going to see myself as this person. If it's I'm going to research this thing and I'm going to figure out the best one, and it's going to be cost and quality. It's going to be optimal. I see myself as the optimizer, making a good decision. All of our decisions are built out of our identity.
Correct. Right, there you go. Right, which is still part of I would say it's a mix of your emotional brain and your rational brain. Because your emotional brain says what your identity is, and your rational brain came along to kind of, what do you want to call it? Add some more facts and optimize it. Right?
Right. Build a process around it.
Build a process around it. So now it becomes a little more entrenched. Now you can explain it to your friends. Why I bought this because blah, 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 blah. Instead of just saying, I bought it because I like it. Right? Or I bought it because it looks cool. I like the way it looks, or whatever. Yeah.
So you and I were talking the other day about coaching, and you being an ultra marathoner. And I think what I had suggested is the phrase that you to go forth and boldly use the phrase that you had told me, which was, the last time I used to only run for last call, and now I run ultra marathons.
Right.
If I can do that, I can show you how. And I'm curious, in the past, because when was that?
Was
that 2 weeks? I don't know, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So, how has that changed your mindset now? That thought process and boldly looking into that tight little statement. How's that changed your process? How's that changed your worldview?
I think I like the idea of going forth more boldly. Because I think, it hadn't been my personality for a while, because I tend to be more quiet, introverty. And it's like with everybody, like say for you brewing beer, if somebody came over and said, wow, you know how to brew beer? You would probably say like, oh yeah, it's nothing. You just put this stuff in the bottle, stick it over there, and right? After you've done it enough times, you think like, what's the big deal, right? But think of how many people try it, fail, come up with a batch of stuff that's not drinkable, everything else, the bottles explode, whatever. And after running enough ultra marathons, I kind of got to the point, and hanging out with people who, you talk to different people that you hang out with in that circle. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do 100-miler. Yeah, sure. What about next weekend? Yeah. It's like, all right, let's just go down and get a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Like, what's the big deal? So you start to think of it just a natural, normal thing. And then when you brought it up, it's like, yeah, that really is a big accomplishment. And it really made me think like, yeah, you do have to start thinking bolder and claim your boldness, which you have accomplished. Even though to the average person, it doesn't seem like a whole lot, right?
Yeah. That was kind of my point, I think, initially, where what has become commonplace to you is uncommon to everyone else. And it takes, I think, a person outside of the situation, outside of ourselves, to be able to point those things out to us. I don't think most of us, unless we're have some sort of narcissistic streak in us, are real good at calling out our greatness until we get used to calling out our greatness.
Right. And you can, and listen to what you just said. Like I was thinking the same example, say my car mechanic, right? who would just think, yeah, I'm just a car mechanic, and he probably looks up to the guy with the suit and tie on in a nice office up there. I think, yeah, but that guy doesn't know jack shit about how to get an engine running, right? Yeah, he knows about stocks and bonds and something else, but you know this, you have your own unique boldness, right? If I can use your phrase.
Yep.
And once he learns it, but you can, and maybe that's the other thing is, you can be bold without being arrogant, right? I would call pain in the ass arrogant. And maybe changing that sense of boldness would help people become more, I would say, confident in other areas of their life. Like, well, yeah, you can transfer that boldness into other stuff that you didn't think you could do. So that's a good phrase. Yeah. I would say if we were going to change our phrasing from today's talk, from focus to claim your boldness. Right? I could go with that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'm thinking, damn, I should have brought my coffee with me too. It's like, yeah. It's like if I could reach across that screen and say, hey, Jason, where's my cup over there? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, these cups are for sale.
Oh, there we go. There's a little plug. Coffee with Human. Order yours now.
I got shirts for sale too. Coffee beans.
Yeah. And if you call right now, we'll send in a special slicer dicer.
Exactly. Oh my God. We should start doing infomercials on Coffee with Humans. That would be great. Somebody bring me an infomercial product and let's do it. I think it'd be so fun.
Yeah. And it have to be a really bizarre type of product too. Yeah.
Like what?
I have to think about that one for a while. That probably has no real other use to it other than the person who invented it, and then we'll see if we can market it somehow. Yeah.
I don't know. I had a friend and I were talking about infomercials and then turning the volume down on infomercials and then overdubbing what we thought.
That's not a bad idea. Just dub in whatever lines out of old movies or whatever. Yeah.
It was funny at the time when we were thinking about it.
At the time, it was funny, and you'd have to say like, was that after a recent batch of brew? Yeah.
I don't know. So your coaching thing, CoachKSP.com. I should put that link up at the on the screen here again. Who do you work with? What's your ideal client?
I would work with people like you. I would normally, but
what are my characteristics? I'm curious now.
That I know you better.
You're like, he's screwed up, and he's bigger than he should be. He should run more.
He should probably run more or something more.
He looks bloated. Let's get him on the treadmill.
Little puffy. Let's put him on a treadmill with a sharp object. Yeah. Nearby. Yeah.
Seriously,
I would say, who do I work with? I work with, I used to say I work with people, the middle-aged recreational athlete. But now, over the years since the combination with my my teaching at the jail and especially working with people in drug recovery programs, I really start to think like most humans who want to it's really people who want to change their lifestyle from whatever it is. And the athletics, the training is just part of it. But I really believe changing your focus, changing your identity, changing a lot of those other things, you can change your lifestyle a lot. So whether it's like running that 5K for the first time ever, or saying like, damn, I really hate going to my job. What can I do to change that? Right? Because what's that all about? Right? And then you start, so if I can change that part, then I can change some other parts of your life. So really, it's really about people who want to change where they're at now in one version or another. I work with recovering drug addicts, and I work with recovering athletes, or I would say wounded athletes. So it's all the same thing. That's getting somebody from over here to over there. So
Okay.
yeah, pretty
Awesome.
simple.
So if a person wanted to up their running, you do you do any focuses on people who want to become ultra marathoners?
Actually,
Want
I
to become
would
the
tell
1%?
I would tell the most people start with the 5K.
Okay.
Just because you get the reward a lot faster because it takes a month and you can go do the 5K versus taking 6 or 7 months of training before you can run your first ultra. If you're brand new, it's kind of like I was. But what I had going in my background was before I started running, I'd already had this long history of going to the gym and kind of weightlifting and doing construction. I was already pretty strong. I just needed how to channel that into something else and build some cardio, learn how to run, all those little things. But yeah, so I do both. I do people who have never run a damn day in their life and teach them how to run. And I've done people who are actually good runners but want to run faster. Or they've been a good runner for years and they got wounded, they broke something happened, and we fix them up, change what they were doing wrong, and they can go back again to the sport. Yeah, so I had a guy, I was talking to this lady over in England the other day who's in a car accident. Metal rods in her legs, pins and plates in her other leg. She went back to run half marathons.
Wow.
Yeah. I had this guy over here in the States who broke his bones in his feet, had, I would say, multiple surgeries over a 3-year pattern because there's surgery, he would go out and break it again, surgery, they'd have to go pin and plate. So it took him 3 years to finally get all the pins and plates done. Okay? And basically taught him how to run all over again. And then he went back to do these things called 72-hour endurance events. Which is amazing. I even think those are kind of wacky. And I run ultramarathon. But I look at a 72-hour event, it's like, wow, that's 3 days in a row, minimal sleep, on the go, bam, 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 bam.
That's intense.
That's a whole nother level of, physical and mental type of stuff.
And that was somebody you worked with?
Yeah, so we got him from being a non-runner after all those surgeries and thinking that he might not ever compete again to going back to that. And he actually finished third at a regional competition, which is quite a big jump.
It seems to me, would it be fair to say that one of your focuses for coaching is if it seems like it's not going to work out for you, you probably should talk to me?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, because I can teach you how it will work out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
You fought against tremendous odds to go from running for last call to running ultra marathons, and a person who's got pins in their legs and that type of stuff to running marathons again, or a person who's doing all these ultra endurance events and finishing at the top. It's not just the individual; it is also the coach that makes that work happen. Correct.
Right. The combination of both come together. Just like in a business, you just don't have production. You also have sales and marketing, because any one without the other one is just a half of a business. Right. Yep. So you need the whole package. Because as you know, all the job as a coach is to give you a little guidance, and he can see the stuff that you don't see. Right. And I go to a coach because they see the stuff that I don't see. That to them is just blatantly obvious. And for all of us, anybody who's ever been married, that your partner sees all those flaws, your flaws, that you for some reason don't see. And you say, what? What are you talking about? Yeah. So that's how that works. So a coach kind of picks up all those little things that you're not picking up on, and then kind of guides you in the right direction. So.
Wow. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool job. Yeah,
we're butting up against our time here for Coffee with Humans. I really appreciate you being with me. This is fantastic, and it does seem like your coaching is designed, or that you have the experience, the wherewithal, the desire to help people who looks like this isn't going to work out for you, but I can show you how it will. That's pretty remarkable in my book. Any other words that you'd like to leave our audience with as we're closing out here?
I would say that tell the audience that, yeah, it is possible. Because it's coming from somebody like, being the short, fat kid growing up who was never picked, who only thought he could only run around the block, maybe, all that kind of stuff, is to go out, and it is doable. And I'll never, ever say it's easy. Possible, yes. Easy, no. But it is possible, and it is definitely worthwhile the effort that you're going to put into it. So, and you will come out a different person at the end.
Yeah, the process will not leave you unchanged.
Correct.
That's great. Yeah. That's great, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Yeah, even though I don't have any coffee over here. Yeah.
That's okay. It is not a prerequisite to being on the show to have coffee in your hand.
Okay.
You're totally forgiven.
And if I had the special mug that says "Coffee with Humans" right there, yeah, right there.
It's a good mug. I like it.
Yeah.
The shirts are pretty good too. They're comfortable. Yeah. Well, to all our viewers and listeners, this has been Coffee with Humans, a live candid talk show broadcast around the world where usually I meet my guests just as we go live, and then you're introduced to that initial conversation. My friend Herb here, he and I talked about 2 weeks ago about his coaching, and I was so excited to have him on. So he clicked the button to have coffee with me. If you want to be on Coffee with Humans, head to coffeewithhumans.com. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. And then we also stream live to your other favorite platforms, and we will catch you next time.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.